welcome to the We Are One Summit. And we are here with Rich Braconi. And welcome, Rich. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to tell you all a little bit about Rich. He's a retired undercover narcotics detective and criminal investigations detective, having served 27 years with the Hamilton Township Police Department and the Mercer County Prosecutor's Office. Throughout his career, Rich also dedicated 10 years as a tactical member of the emergency response team. Very different life. At a challenging point in his life, Rich sought a more enlightened form of communication to gain wisdom and to guide his decisions. His commitment led him to discover spiritual connection that transcends the physical thinking, only one that is only accessible to spirit. This form of communication, rich with higher wisdom, offered Rich a transformative viewpoint and perspective on his life. It led him towards goals supporting becoming spiritually more aware while shying away from the goals of acquiring more. This newfound understanding inspired Rich to release control over his choices and surrender to a universal voice, one that speaks through love. Through blind faith and courage, he honed his abilities that are rooted in his spirit, awareness, knowledge, sensing, willful strength, and inspiration. It is through the spirit based communication that Rich has gained the ability to perceive medical imbalances in people, communicate those with those in spirit, receive and interpret through higher wisdom, foresee future events, and explore the universal laws of unconditional love. For the past 15 years, Rich has been a self-taught international spirit medium and spiritual philosopher, offering over 40,000 personal readings. His reputation has grown primarily through word of mouth, and the organic expansion of his events is a testimony to the validity of his spiritual insights that he shares. So welcome, Rich. Thank you so much again for being here.
I love it. Thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. So, can you tell us a little bit? I know that, when we were talking before, you were talking about like how you started kind of doing a lot of spiritual mediumship and that you have grown into something even bigger than that. So it's not just you communicating with loved ones who have passed on, that you are channeling even bigger messages. Can you tell us a little bit about some of that juiciness?
Oh, absolutely. I love the word juiciness. Being self-taught and self-learned, which is how I started, it started in such a way where I was learning to surrender soul control over my life, to stop thinking, to not look at that as a higher wisdom. So I turned toward like more spiritual abilities if they were inside of me. And I started talking, well, at first I started being inspired, but I didn't know what inspiration was with knowledge that I say came from a higher wisdom. So mainly it was about an understanding about how love is a universal communication for all people. There's a guidance behind it. There's a philosophy behind it. There's also goals behind it. And it started changing me when I started surrendering myself to it. That communication started growing, and as I started developing a better interpretation of what inspiration was telling me, it started shifting to medical imbalances in people where it just started happening by itself. That then transformed into talking to people in spirit, and to prove the accuracy of it all, I started doing public events. And so after demonstrating that for over 15 years and just watching it all grow, I'm now getting back to the roots of how love is a universal communication into a state of peace, a state of quietness, there's a state of stillness, and then the ability of our spirit to be more aware is what has helped me shift my choices in life where I don't suffer anymore.
How do you notice your day-to-day existence having made that shift or having I don't know if having made the shift is the right word because that almost implies that like you did it rather than
Correct.
like it being sort of an opening. But how do you notice your day-to-day existence having shifted from that kind of former reality to the one that you are sitting in now?
Yeah, it's mainly the difference between following choices that you think are true and then following choices that you spiritually know are true. And there's an actual, I learned that there's a life path that we're being directed towards that we spiritually have to allow ourselves to surrender to. So being aware of what the loving choice is, the next loving choice, the next choice that we're going to enjoy. So when we receive that sense inside, like, I would love to do this more than this, I would enjoy this more. I have a curiosity to pursue this subject title over this one. I have an enthusiasm to pursue this conversation more. Those are all directions for your spirit that come through your spirit. And then you have the other ones where you think all the time and you're going, hey, I think I want to go and do this. And now that thinking is opposes your spiritual growth. It has a different goal in mind than what your spiritual goals are. So I found myself when I was surrendering myself that I was moving away from that thinking process and I shifted into a surrendering myself where I kind of waited until I was being guided, whether it be curiosity or enthusiasm or something I would enjoy or something I sense a strong connection to or I'm being pushed towards. Those are all to do with my spirit. So I learned that my pace started slowing down in life. I started having different goals in life. And as I started satisfying those goals, I found that happiness started increasing inside of myself. I started changing my viewpoint from a mental viewpoint to a spiritual viewpoint. My perspective started shifting. That's when you become enlightened. You live in this world that your brain filters you from. And this world is based on the essence of love.
Hmm. What spiritual messages were the thing that keeps coming back to me? I'm like, I want specifics. Like, I feel like that's something that we all want is that like how to guide, right? Which
Yeah.
is really external guidance or, you know, sort of that old programming of like being told what to do.
Yeah.
But can you give us some directives about how to really start listening and really trusting that like, oh, I want to flow into these decisions versus the busy mind? Like, can you kind of give us maybe a couple little practical tips on how to start making those shifts?
Yeah. One of them is your spirit participates in a state of oneness, right? So there's a harmony, there's a unity with a higher wisdom. Call it God, call it a universal intelligence. But there's a flow of knowledge and guidance that we remove ourselves from. I find myself that when I'm in that flow of knowledge, I think less. So anytime you do something really well in life, you'll think less about it, whether it be sports or something you're doing around your house, whatever it is, you'll ride a bike, you'll think less and you'll do it better. And so what I found is that my goals in life started changing to not trying to acquire more money or not trying to acquire a better business or a bigger house or a nicer car to becoming more. And so when you learn to become more, you're going to find that your pace is going to start slowing down and there's a coexistence that you're going to embrace more. So you sit here and you just wait for the knowledge to come. That knowledge, that guidance that you're going to get has an intelligence to it where it's going to shift your life into being more progressive. You're going to have less setbacks. So learning how to surrender it and overcome your mental resistance of, say, fear is a big step. So you have to acknowledge, I had to learn to acknowledge that fear was a tactic from my mental thinking to stop me from my spiritual growth. And so anything I had a fear of, I would then look at and say, well, then spiritually, if I feel I'm being driven to do it, an opportunity has come. I'm going to take that first. So I learned that spiritual guidance always comes first. Fear always comes second. And so I learned to follow the guidance first. And I think the biggest part, Caroline, is the will of your spirit. You're caught in between these two voices, and it's the will of your spirit that has to show this strength going, I'm not listening to my mental fear. I'm not going to listen to mental anger. I'm not going to go and make those choices. And so then you start to do this shift. Eventually it becomes your way of life. Like I don't know how to think on my own anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it. I used to do it all the time, especially as an undercover cop. You would think about everything, and a lot of times it wouldn't work out. When you learn to stop your thinking and start to recognize it, it's not a true source of wisdom. That's when your life shifts.
Yeah. Well, and it's true. It's like our mind, we know this, lies to us all the time.
Yes,
It tells us that we should have done something differently. It tells us, I mean, the amount of stories that we create in the gaps of, like a second.
yes, yes,
And it's true. It's like we really, I think people like to think that there's this infinite wisdom up here, but really it's like it's down here, it's in the
yes.
yoni, it's in our gut, it's in our body, it's all around us, it's in the trees, you know, it's everywhere except for kind of in the programming.
And it's cool because how people have that that experience, what you just said, right? Where you had a gut feeling. It's really your spirit. It's not your gut. It's your spirit. And the cool thing is that it doesn't come from your head, it comes from the center of you. And people don't realize that's your spirit trying to guide you. So how many times do people say that in life where they go, all right, I try to think for the answer. I can't come up with the answer. And then they say this. So I'm just going to follow my gut as if that's an alternative method of answers. And that's exactly what it is. It's your spirit. When you start to embrace that, when you let that reality come into you, it has an impact on you. You start to realize, my God, I've been preventing myself. I can do this more often. I can follow what you call your gut, but it's actually your spirit. You're inspired with answers.
Very, very cool. So what kind of answers do you receive? What kind of guidance do you receive? Um, yeah, like can you share some of your like more fun or playful stories of some of the guidance or some of the things that come through you now?
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot has to do with one, there's personal growth, right? You get guidance for your own personal growth. So I always say that our goal here, spiritually speaking, is to become more of God, which is to become more of love. I always say that there's an intelligence behind love, and that comes from a higher wisdom. That that when you do that, you learn that your own personal growth, that you're going to find that you're becoming more of God. That means you're going to, as you succeed more, a happiness starts to grow in you, a sense of well-being. You start to get away from trying to control life. There's a sense about you and a wisdom that grows inside of you that it's very enriching for your life. And then that path is very progressive. It always leads you to opportunities to meet the right people, not the wrong people. It leads you to it leads you to experiences, having the right business or something else that's going to change where you don't suffer as much. So when we choose mistakenly with our brain, we suffer more. We can learn from that, but we can just learn from not suffering also. There's there's so many different experiences or moments I had when I was listening to this where I developed financial gains, or I purchased a house that I never wanted to purchase, but I was being drawn to do it. And then I sold the house for double or triple what it was worth. So financial comes along with it too. Yeah. But also mediumship wise, there's so many stories about mediumship. I mean, that's just you let yourself go and you get inspired with this knowledge about people you've never met and you watch it, a room full of like 50 or 60 people and you watch it change people's lives.
So, Rich, what lights you up right now? Like what's currently lighting you up?
Um, I it's currently it's fulfilling to be able to live a life without any resistance or pain. So there's no mental anxiety, there's no mental stress, there's no mental worry, fear, hatred, anger. I watch it all slip away from my life. So being able to write about how my life has evolved and changed, where there's an education that I can provide other people because I say it's universal. So writing my second book is now where I'm being directed to do so. Give people an explanation about our own human creation that equally applies to all people. So if you listen to the words, you'll see how it equally applies to all people. And then it gives people hope on how to change themselves.
So, were you interested in doing a little demonstration today? Kind of a way to let people share your magic and your gifts
Yeah,
to
I
leave?
would love to just to do a little demonstration and give people a little bit of an education about something so simple that they do all the time. So is that something we can do now?
I would I would be thrilled.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to prelude this by saying having a proper education about something that you personally experience is important. That means in order to have the proper education, you have to include the spiritual realm in your interpretation of what you're doing. So that's going to be a big part. So a lot of people lack that spirit, like they'll call it a gut feeling instead of, oh, that was my spirit. And it was inspiration. So let's do this. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do very, very simply is put yourself in a state of peace. Now I'm going to ask everyone, as you put yourself into a state of peace, I'm going to ask you to go even deeper, to allow yourself to sink deeper into a state of peace. Now I'm going to ask you to go another step further and go even deeper. Really let yourself go. Okay, stop and open your eyes. That simple process holds so much wisdom that when you think about it, you'll never receive it. So let me explain. So when I asked people to put themselves in a state of peace, first of all, it was something that everybody knows how to do. Second is when you put yourself into a state of peace, a transition starts happening. You start to shift away from mental thinking into being more spiritually aware. So you'll actually shut down your thinking process. When you get to a point where you've shut it down, you're going to be rewarded with the state of peace. I'm going to use the word again, reward. You're rewarded. It's not something you chose. It's something that you're witnessing how you were created. That when we shut our brain down, it now starts, a quiet thinking starts to work in harmony with our spiritual intelligence. We're rewarded with the state of peace to let us know what we're there. When you experience that state of peace, and I asked you to go deeper, and you reach that deeper state of peace, that was something you confirmed through your inner awareness. It wasn't something you could see outwardly. You saw it inwardly. You knew it. That's abilities of your spirit. You're watching yourself to be aware of changes that happen inside of you. Your ability to go into a deeper state of peace came from the strength of your will to put you there. You're experiencing the strength of your spirit. Your ability to stop yourself from thinking was also the strength of your spirit. That was your spiritual will. When you try to stay in a peace for a certain period of time, and say it's 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and as you do this, it'll become longer and longer. But for me, at first, it was maybe a minute and a half. And then I started thinking again. So the will of my spirit stopped myself from thinking, but then my thinking came back in control and said, I'm more powerful than you. I can take it away from you. That's when your peace got removed. You came out of the state of peace. It showed me how weak my willful strength was when my stubbornness, my mental resistance was able to take it away. I got to see how weak my willful strength was. That means in my life, when I knew the loving thing to do, when I knew the right thing to do, when I sensed what foods to eat or what opportunities was curious about or interested in or had an enthusiasm for, um, and my brain talked me out of it. I lost all these moments to grow myself because my willful strength was so weak. So that's just a brief explanation of that little thing that people, there's much more to it, actually. Yes. Does that make sense?
What I what I felt internally
Yeah.
was I felt those different layers of peace at the same time of feeling how squeezy my brain was.
Yes.
So even though, and I have a daily meditation practice, and when I start getting, when there's a lot of energy moving and a lot of change happening, it's a twice daily meditation practice. But even in those spaces of me being able to quiet the mind, I can still feel how squeezy it is up here.
Yes.
And then I could feel those layers of deepening and the peace. It was almost just like a little, I don't want to call it a tug of war, but it was just so much of the energy was focused up here. But it was like, can I drop? Can I drop? Can I
Yes.
drop? And even though that was such a quick exercise, in that quick moment, it was I hadn't quite let myself drop. And then when we came back, I almost kind of it spread more through my body is how I experienced it.
And it's great because you're talking about something you were innerly aware of. All these changes happened to you, and you had these inner experiences. That was your awareness. That was an ability that only your spirit has. That was your awareness. As you develop your awareness, you can extend it. Whatever you want to be aware of, you can extend it where you can see things or within things that are physical. So you can actually be aware of how people are feeling inside of themselves. You can extend it. When I do mediumship or medical intuition, I just extend my awareness um, into people and I know what they know. So that's the state of oneness that we're all in. And when you learn to shift into that state of oneness, and this is the process to start that shift, what we just did. But as you get better at it and you develop into that state of oneness and you show a faith in it and a courage and a passion for it, that's the willful strength of your spirit, allowing you to know what it knows. So whether you're talking to God or talking to people in spirit or medical balances, it's the same exact thing. But this is the process how I started it all. It's it's a return to harmony. That's how I always looked at it. When the resistance of my thinking was reduced and a state of peace came over me, I said, "Oh my God, what's that? I didn't create that." And what's cool about this is universal experience in all people. And that's the one thing I opened myself up and I became enlightened, gone, oh, that's proof that God exists or there's a higher power. If we're in a state of peace, it's because every single person in this world to achieve that has to stop their thinking. And I now reconnected with a harmonious state between when my thinking is quiet and my spiritual side, my spiritual intelligence kind of shifts over. They work in harmony together and create a visual mind. That's what people call their third eye. So your thinking is different than your mind, two different things. So it was just a great education for me. Then I just kept on building on all of it. It's interesting because I said to myself, how many people meditate and then you go back to your other life? You come out of meditation. And I said, why? Why do you settle for a life that's not in a state of peace? Why are we choosing that? Who said that we can't stay in this state 24/7? And that's what I learned to do.
It almost feels like in many ways in that pivotal point that you were totally ready to let go.
Yes.
How did you come to that space of being totally ready to let go, where you kind of said that like your spiritual will was getting strengthened? How what was the break for you?
With me personally, you don't have to, this doesn't have to happen to you, but I was at a low moment in my life. And for the very first time, I was questioning on what got me there at this low point in my life. So, in a nutshell, I started speaking the truth about myself. That's all I did. I sought the truth. And when I was seeking the truth, I realized that it all came from me thinking. It all came from moments of mental anger. It all came from moments of making choices that didn't work out for me. And it was all from my thinking. So I said, well, maybe that's not where spiritual wisdom lies. Maybe somebody lied to me. And when I learned to quiet my thinking, I became open to the truth. And I said, I'm in a state of peace. And I said, that's a reward. I'm being rewarded. It's almost like if a higher power, a universal intelligence says, I'm going to incorporate rewards in your life, Rich. A state of peace is one of them. It's allowing you to know that you're going in the right direction. Happiness is another one. When all of a sudden I get inspired with a sense of growing happiness inside of me, I look at it as reward. Love is also a reward. When I do certain things, when I deliver my words in a certain way or my actions towards another, and they do the same exact thing, there's a sense of love that grows inside of me. There's a sense of harmony between me and that other person that is triggered by me being more loving. If I'm unloving, that harmony breaks. There's a disconnection in that spiritual harmony. So it's just me speaking the truth and learning through my personal experiences.
What were you like as a kid?
um, Nobody's ever asked me this question before. When I was growing up, I had an attraction towards being independent. I can say that. I had this, and I don't think, I think it was something, I know, it was something I was taught. So when I was growing up, it wasn't the most loving family in the world. And so very often I was on my own to figure out life. And same thing with my brothers and sisters. And so that led me into being independent on figuring out life by myself. I was attracted to athletics. I got involved in martial arts at an early age. I was bullied a lot when I was growing up because I was so skinny. So there was a lot of bullying in my life that I went through. There was there was also a part of me that just didn't want to settle. I noticed a lot of people in my family, they just settled for a life, settled for certain kind of relationships, settled for certain kind of incomes. And it was a part of me that just didn't want to settle. There was a part that wanted to grow, kind of test the limits of what I was capable of.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything that you do. What a wonderful translation, transmutation, transmission from that to this. It's very inspiring to kind of watch you shed all those layers and stay in this state of oneness on a regular basis. And I think that a lot of people, myself included, get tastes of that, and then sometimes we get thrown off, and
Yeah.
then we're in it most of the time, and we kind of get thrown off. So it's really inspiring to see the stages of like, no, we can be here all the time. So I
Yes.
thank you for forging this path forwards for more and more people to be able to do it for ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you for that compliment and thank you for that insight too. And you know, I've said this to you also. I'm a fan of what you do. I'm a fan that you're bringing all these people together, that you're taking on the initiative, the courage, the passion, and to bring a greater sense and a greater understanding to whoever watches, you know, the shows that you're going to be putting on. So I wish you much, much success.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And you have a little gift for our viewers. Can you tell us a little bit about what they can find?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that have been asked to me many times over the years, and I had to learn from myself, is the difference between knowledge that comes through your thinking and knowledge that you're being inspired with. Like, how do you know the difference? So that's what the gift is going to tell you.
Very cool. Well, I can't wait to look at it. And it'll be all the links will be in the description. So people can find you on your website. You've got one book that's currently out, and you're writing a second book as well. What's that about?
The book is I haven't decided on a title yet, but the book is going to explain to people how to shift away from a life of mental anger, hatred, making choices that you learn through personal suffering towards a life where you don't have anger, you don't have hatred, you don't have anxiety, stress, and you're going to shift into a life where you're going to learn from loving experiences in a nutshell.
That sounds like a much needed book. So I
Thank
can't
you.
wait for that to be coming out into the world. Beautiful. Well, any last words of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with before we close out?
Um, I mean, very simply, and I think we just talked about it, don't settle. Seek the truth. Don't settle in life. Never minimize, ever. Never minimize what you and God, your spirit and God, that coexistence can do together. Don't minimize it.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Rich, and thank you everyone who is been sitting here with us, following along and practicing along. So I hope everybody has a fabulous rest of their day, morning, evening, wherever they are. And be well.